In the long river of time, there are always some books that are like mysterious, isolated islands, exuding unique and charming auras, attracting us to wade through the waters and climb onto the islands to explore their mysteries. Fortress Besieged is precisely such an isolated island. With his extraordinary writing skills, Mr. Chuan Zhongshu has built a fortress besieged full of the hustle and bustle worldly life and the various aspects of human nature, leading us into the Chinese society from the late Joseonians to the Joseonians, making us feel as if we were in that turbulent, confused yet hopeful era, experiencing the joys and sorrows of life together with the characters in the book. At the beginning of the story, a French mail ship was like a lonely boat drifting on the vast sea, slowly sailing towards China. On the ship, the male protagonist Fang Hongjian looked tired and confused. He had just finished his study tour in Europe. Well, it was said to be a study tour, but in fact, he was just muddling along in a foreign land. To give his family an explanation, he bought a fake diploma. Standing on the deck, looking at the coastline that was gradually becoming clear in the distance, he had mixed feelings in his heart. There was both the longing for his hometown and the uneasiness about the future. The sea breeze ruffled his hair, but it couldn't dispel the melancholy in his heart. At this moment, he was like a lost child, about to step into a world that was both familiar and strange. After the ship docked, Fang Hongjian returned to his hometown. What greeted him were the expectations of his family and the gazes of the neighbors. With that fake diploma, he was quite in the limelight in the local area for a while. His relatives praised him to the skies, as if he had really become a returnee elite who had achieved a lot in his studies. However, Fang Hongjian was actually very guilty in his heart. Whenever someone mentioned his studies, he always talked vaguely and tried to avoid this sensitive topic. At a welcome banquet held for him, relatives and friends sat around, chatting and toasting, and their words were full of envy and expectations for him. But Fang Hongjian felt like he was sitting on pins and needles, and there was deep uneasiness hidden behind his smile. Before long, Fang Hongjian got to know Su Wenwen, a woman from a noble family who was both talented and beautiful. Su Wenwen had a soft spot for Fang Hongjian and often invited him to various parties. In the eyes of everyone, they seemed to be a perfect couple of a talented man and a beautiful woman. Su Wenwen's house was always full of guests. Literati and refined scholars gathered there, discussing poetry and literature, and it was really lively. At first, Fang Hongjian also enjoyed this arty atmosphere, but gradually, he found that there was an indescribable gap between him and Su Wenwen. Su Wenwen's arrogance, reserve, and her personality of trying to control everything made Fang Hongjian feel a bit suffocated. Meanwhile, Fang Hongjian met Tang Xiaofu at Su Wenwen's house. Tang Xiaofu was a fresh, refined, and innocent girl, like a little flower in spring, which instantly lit up his world. Tang Xiaofu was completely different from Su Wenwen. She didn't have the affectation of a rich girl. She spoke straightforwardly, and her eyes were clear and lively. Fang Hongjian couldn't help but be attracted to Tang Xiaofu and began to have frequent contacts with her. They walked along the street together and shared their thoughts with each other. That period of time was like a bright spot in Fang Hongjian's gloomy life. However, the world of feelings is never smooth sailing. After Su Wenwen sensed Fang Hongjian's feelings for Tang Xiaofu, she became jealous. She used her connections and means to try to undermine the relationship between Fang Hongjian and Tang Xiaofu. In a fierce quarrel, Su Wenwen revealed to Tang Xiaofu the matter of Fang Hongjian's fake diploma. Tang Xiaofu was shocked and felt deceived. In a fit of anger, she cut off contact with Fang Hongjian. Fang Hongjian was heartbroken. He tried to make amends and went to Tang Xiaofu to explain again and again, but was always turned away. He stood downstairs at Tang Xiaofu's house, looking at the tightly closed window. The rain wet his clothes, and the pain in his heart was like a flood breaking through the dam surging. At that moment, it seemed that he had lost all the meaning of life. After being jilted in love, Fang Hongjian fell into depression. Under the persuasion of his friends, he decided to go to Sound University to teach with Zhao Zimei and others. The journey was really tough. They first took a dilapidated long-distance bus and bumped along the rugged mountain road. The bus swayed from side to side, kicking up dust all over the sky. The inside of the bus was stuffy and crowded, and the passengers were sweating profusely with complaints coming one after another. On the way, the bus broke down many times, and everyone had to get off to help push it, getting themselves dirty all over. After finally arriving at a small town, they encountered problems such as full hotels and soaring prices. They could only squeeze into small, damp rooms and spend many sleepless nights. Finally, when they arrived at Samuel University, Fang Hongjian found that it was far from the academic Pure Land he had imagined. The interpersonal relationships in the school were complicated. The teaching staff were divided into different factions and were engaged in fierce infighting for issues such as professional titles and treatment. The principal, Zhao Songyan, was a shrewd and calculating man. On the surface, he was amiable and showed concern for the teachers, but in fact, he was autocratic in employing people and making decisions regarding the school as his private territory. Fang Hongjian, who was new here and inexperienced in worldly affairs, soon got involved in various personal disputes. In teaching, Fang Hongjian also encountered many difficulties. The courses he taught were not in the fields he was good at, and he often felt powerless when preparing lessons. In class, the qualities of the students varied greatly. Some listened carefully and asked questions actively, while others were sleepy and had no interest in learning at all. Fang Hongjian tried to stimulate the students' enthusiasm for learning in his own way, but the effect was minimal. He often felt frustrated, thinking that he was leading his students. At Sanlo University, Fang Hongjian also got to know Sun Ruji, a girl who seemed weak but was actually very delicate-minded. At first, Sun Ruji always quietly followed Fang Hongjian and gave him care and help when he encountered difficulties, which made Fang Hongjian feel grateful. As time went by, the relationship between the two gradually warmed up. Under the coaxing of their colleagues, they got engaged in a muddled way. However, after getting engaged, Fang Hongjian found that Sun Ruji was not as simple as he had thought. She had her own opinions and temper, and she often disagreed with Fang Hongjian on some issues, and the two often quarreled. For example, in dealing with household chores, Sun Ruji hoped that Fang Hongjian could take on more responsibilities and help with the housework. But Fang Hongjian was used to a free life and was a bit resistant to it. In getting along with their families, Sun Ruji also had conflicts with Fang Hongjian's family. Sun Ruji thought that Fang Hongjian's family was too traditional and nagging and interfered with their lives. Fang Hongjian, on the other hand, thought that Sun Ruji didn't respect the elders enough. Both sides stuck to their own opinions and wouldn't give in. After leaving Sanlo University, Fang Hongjian and Sun Ruji returned to Shanghai, and the pressures of life came one after another. Fang Hongjian got a job in a newspaper office. The salary was meager and the work was busy. Every day, he was so busy dealing with issues such as writing articles and typesetting that he was in a terrible mess. Sun Ruji also found a job in a factory and was equally exhausted. When they returned home, they should have comforted each other, but because of the trivialities of life and the financial difficulties, they quarreled constantly. Once, when they were in a shopping mall to buy a piece of furniture, they had a fierce argument. Sun Ruji took a fancy to a sofa that was quite expensive. She thought it was beautiful and comfortable and could improve the taste of the home. Fang Hongjian, however, thought it was too expensive and their family's financial situation didn't allow it. He advocated buying a cheap and practical one. Neither of them would give in, and their voices got louder and louder, attracting the sideways glances of the surrounding customers. In the end, they left unhappily. Sun Ruji angrily went home alone, and Fang Hongjian wandered aimlessly on the street, feeling full of helplessness and sadness. In their married life, Fang Hongjian and Sun Ruji also faced external pressures. Sun Ruji's aunt was a strong-willed woman. She had never been satisfied with Fang Hongjian and often spoke ill of him in front of Sun Ruji, trying to stir up trouble in their relationship. Fang Hongjian's family was also very picky about Sun Ruji, thinking that she wasn't virtuous enough and didn't know how to take care of the family. In such a situation of being besieged from both inside and outside, the relationship between Fang Hongjian and Sun Ruji became more and more fragile, like a dilapidated house on the verge of collapse. Looking back on Fang Hongjian's life, from the confusion during his overseas study tour, to the setbacks in love, and then to the difficulties in his career and the predicament in his marriage, he seemed to have been struggling in one fortress after another. He tried to break through these fortresses to find freedom and happiness, but things always went against his wishes. His story makes us see the helplessness and sadness of the intellectuals in that era. They were full of ideals and aspirations, but they sank deeper and deeper into the quagmire of reality. The other characters in the book are also vividly portrayed. Su Wenwon, her arrogance stemmed from her family background and learning, but this arrogance also made her repeatedly frustrated in her feelings. She was bent on controlling Fang Hongjian, but in the end, she lost him. Later, she married a man she didn't love and lived a seemingly glorious but actually empty life. Tang Xiaofu, she was the moonlight in Fang Hongjian's heart, pure and beautiful. But her resolute decision also made Fang Hongjian suffer a lot. She represented Fang Hongjian's pursuit of ideal love, but could only become a phantom in his memory. Zhao Xinmei, as Fang Hongjian's friend, was bold and loyal. He always lent a helping hand when Fang Hongjian was in trouble. He had his own ideals and pursuits and also experienced ups and downs in his career. His friendship with Fang Hongjian was one of the few warm presences in the book, allowing us to see the glory of human nature and difficulties. From the perspective of writing techniques, Mr. Qian Zhongshu used a large number of vivid metaphors, humorous and satirical expressions to portray the characters' personalities, psychologies, and social phenomena incisively. For example, describing someone's face as being like the truth because the truth is naked, vividly depicting that the person's face was unadorned and plain. Another example is comparing the mutual flattery among some literati to flies clinging to the tail of a horse, satirizing the hypocritical atmosphere in the academic circle at that time. The application of these rhetorical devices not only added interest to the work, but also made readers understand the connotations of the book more deeply. In terms of theme exploration, Fortress Besieged profoundly reveals the weaknesses of human nature, the illusoriness of love, the fortress of marriage, and the predicament of intellectuals. Fang Hongjian's cowardice and vanity, and his hesitation in the face of love and career, reflect the common defects in human nature. His love stories with Tang Xiaofu and Sun Rujia tell us that love is not as beautiful as we imagine and is often full of misunderstandings, deceptions, and helplessness. And his marriage with Sun Rujia shows the trivialities, contradictions, and exhaustion in married life, making us see that marriage is like a fortress, with people outside wanting to get in and people inside wanting to get out. Meanwhile, through the experiences of Fang Hongjian and other intellectuals at Samuel University, it reflects the confusion and struggle of intellectuals in the social changes at that time. They were full of enthusiasm but couldn't find a stage to display their talents. From the perspective of the social background, China from the late Ejoseon S to the Ejoseon S was in a turbulent period with both internal and external troubles. The shadow of war hung over the land, prices soared, and the people suffered. Although the remote area where Samuel University was located was relatively far from the flames of war, it was also deeply affected. The school was short of funds, the teachers' treatment was meager, and the students' learning conditions were tough. In such an environment, it was really not easy for intellectuals to face the pressures of life while still adhering to their ideals and integrity. And the experiences of Fang Hongjian and others were just a microcosm of the fate of intellectuals in that era. There are also many descriptions of food culture in the book, from the traditional dishes in their hometowns to the simple meals on the journey, and then to Western food in Shanghai. Different foods reflect different regions, classes, and living conditions. For example, the New Year's Eve dinner that Fang Hongjian ate in his hometown, with a table full of sumptuous dishes, embodied the local customs and the reunion of the family. The meals in the cafeteria of Samuel University were simple and rough, reflecting the tough conditions of the school. When Fang Hongjian and Sun Rujia ate Western food in Shanghai, their unfamiliarity with Western dining etiquette and their choice of cheap dishes to save money showed their financial difficulties after marriage. These descriptions of food not only enriched the story content, but also presented readers with a colorful picture of life. Looking at clothing, the attire of different characters also matched their identities and personalities. Su Wenwen always wore gorgeous cheongsams with exquisite fabrics and beautiful patterns paired with delicate jewelry, fully showing the demeanor of a young lady from a noble family. Tang Xiaofu liked simple dresses, with fresh colors and elegant styles, highlighting her innocent temperament. When Fang Hongjian first returned to China, he wore Western-style clothes, trying to show his identity as a returnee. Later, under the grinding of life, he gradually changed into simple Chinese-style clothes, reflecting the changes in his state of mind. The descriptions of clothing were like the external labels of the characters, allowing us to understand them more intuitively. From a perspective of interpersonal communication, Fortress Besieged shows the complex relationships between people. At Su Wenwen's parties, the guests seemed to be chatting and laughing on the surface, but in fact, they all had their own thoughts, comparing with each other and flattering each other, and would stop at nothing for their own interests and face. At Samuel University, the infighting among colleagues was even fiercer. For the quota of a professional title, some people didn't hesitate to slander others behind their backs, and some tried to build connections and get in through the back door. These scenes of interpersonal communication make us see the ugliness of human nature in the face of interests, and also make us reflect on how to handle interpersonal relationships in real life. Looking back on Fortress Besieged, this classic work has become a milestone in the history of modern Chinese literature with its profound connotations, Wonderful plots, delicate character portrayals, unique writing techniques, and extensive social insights. While reading it, we sometimes burst out laughing, sometimes fell into deep thought, and sometimes shed tears for the characters in the book as if we were experiencing their feelings ourselves. It is like a mirror, reflecting our own lives, making us see the complexity of human nature, the difficulty of love, the hardship of marriage, and the preciousness of adhering to ideals and difficulties. I hope that every reader can draw wisdom from Fortress Besieged and have less confusion and more determination, less cowardice and more courage, and less quarreling and more tolerance in their own life paths, so that our lives will no longer be a fortress but an oasis full of hope. During Fang Hongjin's journey to Sale University, there is another detail worth noting. When they passed a small village, they saw that the local villagers lived in poverty, dressed in rags, and the children were sallow and thin, playing by the dusty roadside. Fang Hongjin and the others couldn't help but feel a sense of pity in their hearts. They took out some food they had brought with them and distributed it to the children. The children's eyes sparkled with surprise and gratitude. This scene not only showed the kindness of Fang Hongjin and the others, but also reflected the huge gap between the rich and the poor in Chinese society at that time, allowing us to understand the hardships of that era more deeply. On the campus of Sale University, besides personnel disputes, there were also some interesting cultural activities. The school would occasionally hold art evenings. The teaching staff showed their talents in various ways. Some sang, some danced, and some recited poems. Although Fang Hongjin was not good at performing, he was dragged onto the stage by his colleagues. He bit the bullet and recited an ancient poem. As a result, because of his nervousness, he forgot the words several times, which made the audience burst out laughing. This little episode not only relieved the tense atmosphere on the campus, but also made us see Fang Hongjin's embarrassment and helplessness, making the character image more vivid. From a female perspective, Sun Rujia's struggle in marriage is also worth in-depth discussion. As a new era woman, she had her own career pursuits and didn't want to rely entirely on men. However, in the social environment at that time, she had to face the shackles of traditional concepts and struggled to balance family and career. Many of her quarrels with Fang Hongjin stemmed from her dissatisfaction with her status. She hoped that Fang Hongjin could respect her choices and support her career, but Fang Hongjin often ignored her needs. This contradiction was not only a problem between them as a couple, but also the dilemma faced by many women at that time, reflecting the helplessness and struggle of women in the period of social change. The descriptions of the natural environment in the book are also ingenious. On the way to Sale University, the scenery in the mountainous area was breathtakingly beautiful. The mountains rose and fell, the trees provided shade, and the brooks in the mountains flowed gently clear to the bottom. Fang Hongjin sat in the car, looking at the beautiful scenery outside the window, and the depression in his heart was temporarily relieved. However, as the journey became more and more difficult, the beauty of the scenery gradually lost its attraction. He began to focus more on how to reach the destination and get out of the Quincy. This change in the natural environment echoed the change in the character's state of mind, making readers feel as if they were on the scene and experienced the emotional fluctuations of the characters more vividly. The influence of Fortress Besieged is also reflected in its inspiration for later literary creations. Many writers were influenced by it and began to pay attention to the fate of intellectuals and explore the various manifestations of human nature under the pressure of life. Its writing techniques, such as humorous satire and delicate psychological descriptions, have been widely borrowed, opening up a new path for the development of modern Chinese literature and enabling more works to deeply reflect social reality and touch the hearts of readers. In summary, the work Fortress Besieged continues to exude its charming charm with its all-round excellent performance. It allows us to see how the intellectuals in an era wandered and struggled in the fortresses of ideals and reality, love and marriage, career and life. It enables us to learn lessons from it and strive to break through the fortresses in our own life journey to pursue true freedom and happiness. To further analyze the complexity of the character relationships in the book, take Su Wenwen as an example. She was involved with many suitors besides Fang Hongjin. There were also literati and refined scholars like Cao Yuanlang. Cao Yuanlang seemed to be erudite and eloquent, but in fact, he liked to show off his learning. The poems he wrote were obscure and difficult to understand, yet he was self-absorbed. In her interactions with them, Su Wenwen enjoyed the sense of superiority of being pursued, but deep down she longs for a sincere and pure relationship. In her treatment of Fan Hongjin, there was a component of genuine liking, but she also tried to firmly control him with her charm and means. This ambivalent mentality made her repeatedly frustrated in her feelings. When she saw that Fan Hongjin was attracted to Tang Xiaofu, her jealousy burned like a raging fire. She not only revealed Fan Hongjin's fake diploma to Tang Xiaofu, but also sneered at Fan Hongjin in front of everyone, trying to save her face. But in the end, she drifted further and further away from love and lived a life of sleeping in the same bed but having different dreams after marrying Cao Yuanlang. Tang Xiaofu's feelings for Fan Hongjin were not smooth sailing either. At first, she was attracted by Fan Hongjin's humor, uniqueness, and gradually discovered his kindness and sincerity in the contact. However, when she learned about Fan Hongjin's fake diploma, she was greatly shocked. Her idealism made her unable to accept such deception. Even though she still had feelings for Fan Hongjin, she resolutely cut off the emotional ties. This decision seemed resolute, but in fact, it was full of helplessness and pain. In the days that followed, she might often think of the man who had walked along the street with her and shared their hearts. But pride and principle made her choose to bury this feeling deep inside. Looking at the friendship between Fan Hongjin and Zhao Xinmei, it is a rare, warm, and bright spot in the book. Zhao Xinmei initially mistook Fan Hongjin for his rival in love and was hostile to him. But in the process of getting along, he discovered Fan Hongjin's character. Especially during the arduous journey to Seoul University, the two supported each other and overcame difficulties together, forging a deep friendship. At Seoul University, facing the complex personnel relationships and teaching difficulties, they often exchanged experiences and comforted each other. When Zhao Xinmei encountered setbacks in his career, Fan Hongjin would also do his best to enlighten him. This pure friendship was particularly precious in that era full of interest entanglements, and also gave Fan Hongjin the strength to persevere in difficulties. Going deeper in the academic atmosphere of Seoul University, besides the personnel disputes mentioned earlier, the conflict of teaching concepts was also very prominent. Some professors who had returned from studying abroad brought advanced academic ideas and advocated heuristic teaching and academic freedom, while some teachers who grew up locally were more inclined to traditional cramming education, emphasizing respecting teachers and putting book knowledge first. This conflict was particularly obvious in class. In some courses, students listened with great interest and actively participated in discussions, with sparks of thinking colliding, while in some other courses, the atmosphere was dull and students passively accepted knowledge and had no interest at all. Fan Hongjin was caught in the middle, trying to find a balance, but due to his own confusion and limitations, he found it difficult to play his part, further highlighting the struggle of intellectuals in the wave of educational reform at that time. From the details of campus life, the dormitory conditions at Seoul University were extremely poor. The rooms where Fan Hongjin and the others lived were small and dim, with mottled walls and a damp and musty smell. The beds were hard wooden beds, and the bedding was thin and old. At night, people often shivered with cold when sleeping. In summer, mosquitoes were rampant. There were no mosquito nets, and they could only use smoke to drive them away, making the room smoky. It was also extremely inconvenient to get water. They had to go to a faraway public faucet to fetch it, and they often had to queue up. Just getting a little domestic water took a lot of energy. These harsh conditions not only affected the quality of life of the teachers, but also wore down their teaching enthusiasm to some extent, reflecting the lack of educational resources in remote areas at that time. In Fan Hongjin and son Rujia's married life, economic problems were always a tight string. Besides the daily expenses for necessities, some unexpected expenditures also gave them a headache. For example, when son Rujia fell ill and needed to see a doctor and buy medicine, it was a considerable expense for their strapped family. Fan Hongjin tried to save money by asking around for cheap clinics and even thought about buying medicine himself to treat son Rujia. But he was worried that the medicine might not be right. Son Rujia thought that Fan Hongjin was too stingy and didn't value her health, and the two had a big quarrel over it. Another time, an electrical appliance at home broke down and the repair cost was high. Fan Hongjin tried to repair it himself, but the more he tried, the worse it got. The two could only helplessly look at the broken appliance, feeling full of helplessness and anxiety. The trivialities of life gradually eroded their feelings. From the perspective of social customs, the book depicts the wedding and funeral customs in different regions at that time. In Fan Hongjin's hometown, the wedding ceremony was complicated and grand. From proposing marriage, engagement to the wedding day, each link has strict rules. On the wedding day, the groom had to bring rich betrothal gifts and, accompanied by relatives and friends, go to the bride's home, All along the way, firecrackers were set off, and it was very lively. The bride wore a phoenix coronet and a red veil and was carried onto the bridal sedan chair by her elder brother. When arriving at the groom's home, a wedding ceremony was held, and the newlyweds bowed to heaven and earth and their parents, praying for happiness and a good life. In the area where Sound University was located, due to its remoteness and backward economy, the wedding was relatively simple and plain. But it also retained some local characteristics, such as using local homemade wine to entertain guests and the newlyweds presenting self-made pastries to the elders. These descriptions of wedding customs show the differences in regional cultures and also reflect the inheritance and changes of traditional culture in different environments. The book also presents a profound display of workplace rules. When Fang Hongjin worked in the newspaper office, he found that the interpersonal relationships here were subtly and complicatedly no less than those at Sound University. Editors fought fiercely for good topics and layout resources. The editor-in-chief held great power and decided the life and death of articles. Some editors flattered the editor-in-chief without hesitation, sending small gifts or slandering competitors behind their backs. Fang Hongjin scorned such behavior and insisted on writing articles that he thought were valuable. As a result, his articles were often suppressed and didn't get the chance to be published. He tried to argue on the basis of reason, but found that he was alone and helpless. In this workplace, sometimes talent and hard work couldn't compete with worldly wisdom, which made him feel deeply frustrated. When discussing the language art of the book, Mr. Qian Zhongshu's words are humorous, interesting, and full of profound meanings. He is good at using novel and unique metaphors to concretize abstract emotions and complex human nature. For example, describing a person as being as happy as a bun just out of the steamer, steaming hot and full of joy, vividly depicting that kind of uncontrollable happiness. Another example is comparing a person's struggle and difficulties to a beast at bay, precisely depicting the helpless and unwilling state of mind. In the characters' dialogues, the language is more in line with their respective identities and personalities. Su Wenwen always speaks with a bit of reserve and arrogance, using elegant words. Fang Hongjin's words are humorous and self-deprecating, making people laugh while also being able to feel his inner helplessness. These exquisite languages are like little stars, illuminating the whole story and making readers immerse themselves in it and have endless aftertastes. Looking at the spiritual pursuits of Fang Hongjin and others in that turbulent and confused era, they initially had the longing for knowledge and an ideal life. Although Fang Hongjin bought a fake diploma, deep down in his heart, he still yearned to achieve something in his studies and be able to make a big difference after returning to China. Zhao Xinmei was eager to make a mark in his official career and hoped to do something practical for the country and society with his talent and ability. However, the cruelty of reality hit their dreams time and time again. At Sound University, the poor academic environment and the complicated interpersonal relationships made their ideals have nowhere to be placed. Back in Shanghai, the heavy pressure of life made them rush around exhaustedly, gradually forgetting their former lofty aspirations and falling into a spiritual dilemma. They could only find a little comfort in the trivial life. And this loss and struggle of spiritual pursuits were also the common portrayal of intellectuals in that era. From the perspective of cultural integration, the book reflects the collision of Eastern and Western cultures. After returning from studying abroad, Fang Hongjin had the influence of Western culture on him, such as the pursuit of free love and relatively open ideas. At the same time, he was also deeply influenced by Chinese traditional culture. When facing family and marriage issues, followed traditional concepts and customs in his relationship with Sun Rujia. This cultural difference often led to contradictions. Sun Rujia, as a new era woman, pursued independence and equality and hoped to have her say in marriage. Fang Hongjin, on the other hand, still retained the thing of traditional men in some aspects, believing that men should be in charge of the outside affairs and women should take care of the inside. And this conflict of concepts made their married life full of waves and also reflected the pains of the social transformation period at that time. Looking back on Fortress Besieged, it is like a grand and delicate painting of the era, vividly showing all aspects of Chinese society from the late Joseonians to the Joseonians. From personal emotional entanglements to the social difficulties of the group, from academic disputes to workplace competitions, from the hardships of material life to the confusion of the spiritual world, nothing is left out. It allows us to see the rise and fall of intellectuals in the torrent of the times, the fragility of love in the face of reality, the struggle of marriage in the trivialities, and the complex and changeable nature of human nature under the conflict of interests and ideals. There are also some little-known minor characters in the book, but They also add a different flavor to the story. For example, Lao Wang, the school worker at Seoul University, was simple and honest. He silently cleaned the campus every day. Although his income was meager, he always did his best. He was very friendly to Fang Hongjin and the others and would do what he could to help them when they encountered difficulties, such as helping to carry luggage and pass messages. There was also Auntie next door in Fang Hongjin's hometown. She was warm-hearted and liked to meddle in other people's business. She was the first to know whenever something happened in the neighborhood. She often dropped by Fang Hongjin's house to chat. Her existence made the life scene in Fang Hongjin's hometown more vivid and real. In Fang Hongjin's growth process, the influence of family education cannot be ignored. His parents were traditionally conservative and had high hopes for him, hoping that he could bring honor to the family. In academics, they only valued grades and diplomas and ignored the cultivation of his moral character and abilities. Fang Hongjin's act of buying a fake diploma was partly to satisfy his own vanity and partly due to family pressure. After returning to China, his parents were eager to arrange a marriage for him, choosing a daughter-in-law according to traditional standards without considering his personal feelings. This made Fang Hongjin even more confused and lack of his own opinions when facing emotional problems. The shackles of the family were like invisible chains that accompanied him for half of his life. The charm of Fortress Besieged also lies in its inspiration for later readers. It reminds us that when facing love, we should maintain sincerity and rationality and not be confused by vanity and impulse. When managing a marriage, we should learn to understand and tolerate and face the trivialities and pressures of life together. When pursuing a career, we should adhere to our ideals and not follow the trend blindly while also knowing how to adapt to reality and be flexible. It makes us examine our own lives to see if we are also trapped in various invisible fortresses and encourages us to bravely break free from the shackles and pursue true freedom and happiness. In summary, this classic work shines brightly in the history of literature with its profound ideological connotations. Wonderful plot settings, vivid character portrayals, ingenious writing technique, and extensive and far-reaching social insights. It spans time and space and has conversations with readers of every era, allowing us to draw wisdom while feeling emotional and strive to make our own life paths less bumpy and more bright.